Sammy Wilson.
Madam Speaker, first of all, can I welcome a number of measures in the budget. I think that the reduction in income tax thresholds is important for those who are in work and who wish to keep their income and spend it as they see fit rather than the government see fit. I think that the changes for savers again is an important change, and especially for those who are on lower incomes and for perhaps those who are self-employed, and the incentives that there are there. Though I would point out that I think that whilst the government has presented this as something, some of these changes, especially the lifetime ISAs and the help for low-income savers, many will still struggle to find the money to put aside for some of those initiatives. The change in business rates, again, I think is an important one for small businesses which are struggling, especially in town centres, and also the promises to deal with tax avoidance. Though we have heard these promises before, and very often nothing has come from them. And I'll give way, yes.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Is he not concerned, as I am, that the whole tax avoidance strategy is rhetoric rather than reality, when HMRC want to close 90% of its offices, some of which are in Northern Ireland?
And I think that there has to be this connect between the promises that the government makes and the ability to deliver on them, whether that's through the legislative changes or indeed through having the resources to deal with the particular issues. In relation to Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Executive will benefit by the tune of about £220 million over the CSR period from Barnett consequentials, and I think that many people will welcome the fact that £6 million or £5 million is being set aside to establish an air ambulance in Northern Ireland, something which we have been calling for a long time. However, there are two areas that I want to deal with. And I want to start off really where the member from Stroud finished off in his speech, and that is the references which the Chancellor made to the European Union in his speech. Now, I noticed it was fairly scant, and indeed I think many people were probably surprised, given the way in which the government has been trying to drive this issue. On the other hand, I am not surprised, because really what does he have to say about retaining membership of the EU? First of all, he talks about struggling with the budget deficit and with public finances, yet is quite happy to give £10 billion a year to the EU for money which is spent by the EU. Very often the money is so badly spent that their accounts are qualified every year. It goes on fraudulent activities, it disappears into black holes, it goes on vanity projects, and I notice some of the most vociferous supporters of giving public funds to this source are from the Labour Party, when they complain about the cuts in services to their own constituents. And of course, the other thing that the Chancellor would have had to address is the fact that although he is going to give £6 billion worth of corporation tax cuts to companies, over the same period he is going to take £7 billion more of them in environmental levies, most of which are driven by European directives. So on one hand he gives money to businesses, and on the other hand, of course, European directives ensures that he has to take it from them. There has been much said, and indeed the member for Stroud got it wrong when he talked about what the OBR has said about our leaving the EU. The OBR was not definite that certain things would happen. Indeed, the OBR report says that it could usher in. It could have negative impacts. It might result in greater volatility in financial markets. And that's what the Chancellor said. The ironic thing, of course, was in his speech, no sooner had he uttered those threatenings and slaughterings about jobs and investment and everything else, than he said, the very next sentence, he pointed out that since the autumn statement, Now, since the autumn statement, of course, we have had all of the uncertainty about we're going to have a referendum, the United Kingdom might vote to leave the EU. But since the autumn statement, the OBR we have created 150,000 more jobs than the OBR expected. So here we have, on one hand, all this volatility, all of this uncertainty, and yet in the face of a referendum, businesses are not reflecting that uncertainty. They're not reflecting those fears because, according to the Chancellor, they're creating 150,000 more jobs than what the OBR had expected. And I'll give way to the member, yes.
I was just wondering if the honourable member was aware that 80% of businesses in Northern Ireland want to stay in the European Union.
Well, of course, it depends which survey you look at, whether it's the large firms that actually benefit from the lobbying power which they have to restrict innovation and restrict the entry of small firms into markets, or whether you're looking at small businesses who are buried under the regulations and strangled by the red tape which emanates from Europe as well. But I think that the Chancellor carefully avoided too much about the EU, because there is not actually a good story to tell in budgetary terms as far as her membership of the EU is concerned. And indeed, I notice that so intent is he on ensuring that attention is not drawn to it, that in the executive summary in Chart 1, EU transactions are included with others, because they didn't even want to highlight the exact amount of money we pay into the EU. The second issue I want to deal with, however, is the issue of inequality across the United Kingdom and across sectors of the population in the United Kingdom. And the one thing, first of all, growth forecasts have been reduced, and have been reduced for a whole range of reasons. Some outside the control of the Chancellor, some not outside the control of the Chancellor, because, of course, I believe that one of the ways in which we could have improved growth was to have borrowed money for infrastructure projects. I find it inconceivable that the government should talk about we cannot let the level of debt go up when there are good infrastructure projects which would give a good rate of return, and yet is quite happy for debt to go up to finance consumer spending, which has been the main driver of growth. I would rather see growth driven by spending on infrastructure projects which increase productivity, which give a return, which generate tax revenues in the future, rather than putting individuals in jeopardy if there happens to be an increase in interest rates. I'll not give way, because I don't think I'll get an extra minute on that, and therefore, if you don't mind, I won't. So, if the growth forecast is going down, the one thing which we know from experience is that it's the regions of the United Kingdom, places like Northern Ireland, places like the North East and the North West, places like Scotland, that tend to experience the greatest impact. And already, if one looks at the figures which have been produced in the budget statement, the growth rates in Northern Ireland are half of what they were in London. Indeed, there are only 2 regions of the United Kingdom that exceeded the average growth over the last 4 years, and that's London and the South East. All other areas did not experience the same rate of growth. And for that reason, I believe that there is a strong case for saying that infrastructure investment in those kinds of areas could help us to stimulate those parts of the economy and could help to bring them up. And it's one of the reasons why I'm disappointed to see that there were not more infrastructure projects announced and more commitment to infrastructure projects announced in the budget. I hope that when for example, funding is made available for research and innovation, that places like Northern Ireland will not be excluded, because Queen's University in Northern Ireland has been one of because of its excellent research, has been one of those drivers of growth for many businesses, innovation and help in getting them into export markets. The second area of inequality is inequality within income groups. And I don't think the government can ignore the fact that we are getting increasingly a very dangerous two-nation state where there are, at the bottom of society, those who are without hope, and even with tax cuts on the people who will pay no income tax. That benefits me as well as it benefits lower income groups. And I believe that there needs to be a greater focus on those people who find themselves without skills, without hope, without income to do the day-to-day things that they require to do. And I've got to say, when one sees the resources which are going to be devoted towards the cut in capital gains tax, as opposed to the resources which are taken off some of those who are on benefit and can't escape benefit because of disability, etc. That illustrates to me that the government has a long way to go and much thinking to do about how we deal with those who are less fortunate at the lower income end of the spectrum, and indeed who need a leg up, the people who really need a leg up and who need to have more resources devoted to them.
David